Hello and welcome back to the Palaeocast Gaming Network, and welcome to Wyoming. I've been dying to show you around here because I kind of lived in Wyoming a few years ago. I was digging for dinosaur bones and other Jurassic fossils as part of this huge project, and it was amazing. It was such a big deal. I was even interviewed on the news for it. Look, there I am, that ignorant child blissfully unaware of the impending horrors of 2020. Anyway, the plan for today, we're going to do another one of those classic little geology road trips. We're going to be heading through the Bighorn Mountains, make a quick stop in Thermopolis to see the Wyoming Dinosaur Center, go past the Grand Teton Range, and we'll end up somewhere up here in Yellowstone to see some lovely bison and talk about supervolcanoes. But first, we're going to head to the very northeastern corner of Wyoming to visit a very awesome landmark, which I unfortunately didn't get to see in person, so I'm really looking forward to this. And there it is. Okay, that looks great. Let's just, we'll just pull over in a sec. Perfect. Okay, so... Oh, also we're bringing this boat with us. I'm meant to be taking it to Seattle. I don't think that's gonna happen. So this is Devil's Tower, and you may be wondering, how the hell did this thing form? Well, around 50 million years ago, this entire structure was deep underground. Back then we'd be buried underneath, miles of rock layered up on top of us. The surface would have been way up there. And down here, hot molten magma was injected up into the Earth's crust. And over hundreds of years, this magma cools and solidified underground, and when molten rock cools, it contracts, it tightens up and creates these sort of hexagonal cracks that we call columnar jointing. You can find the exact same structures all over the world. In Northern Ireland, you have the Giant's Causeway, and you have the Devil's Post Pile in California. We've even found columnar jointing on the surface of Mars as well. This is just what magma does. But if we look at the surrounding sediment, you can kind of see from here it's pretty soft, sort of crumbly sedimentary rock. And over time, rainfall and rivers and glaciers would scour away at the surface, up above, down, 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 eating away at the soft sedimentary rock until suddenly just we hit this solid block of igneous rock. Igneous rock is made of interlocking crystals. It's super tough and it's much more resistant to erosion than the sediment around it. So whilst the surface is going down, the solid lava just kind of stays put, creating this beautiful tower. And eventually it starts to even protect the softer sediment beneath it. That's why it's sort of raised up on this little plinth for itself. To be clear, the tower is still being destroyed. I mean, you can kind of see from here, there's debris at the base. It's just happening relatively more slowly than the rocks around it. So here's another kind of thing to this. It turns out once you become, I guess, associated with Wyoming and its geology and its paleontology, you're treated to various emails and DMs from conspiracy theorists. It used to be once a day, now it's maybe every 2 or 3 months, I don't know, about how dinosaur fossils are fake and we're faking it, or flat earth or hollow earth, but also I got a ton of emails about how Devil's Tower is actually a giant tree stump and big paleontology is keeping it a secret. There are literally hours and hours of video essays about this. So if you want to delve into a crazy rabbit hole about pseudo-geology and biblical giants, go for it. But it will, permanently ruin your YouTube recommendations. Alright, so I've jumped ahead a little bit, and we're now just heading into the Bighorn Mountains. And I don't have, too much to say about this. There's not a lot of fossils found up here. They're actually over the mountains in the Bighorn Basin. But I want to tell you about the project that I was involved in. So it was called Mission Jurassic. You can Google it. There's a ton of articles about it. But the aim of the project was essentially to uncover this 150 million year old Jurassic ecosystem and hopefully find as many new species as we could along the way. At the moment, we're basically extracting 2 giant sauropod dinosaurs with the aim of putting them on display in the Children's Museum of Indianapolis in Indiana at some point in the near future. I'm legally not allowed to give away the exact location of the dig site. It's not that I could show you in the game anyway, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's often called the Badlands. There's no water, it's just bare rock and rattlesnakes and scorpions and mountain lions. It's amazing. But I want to talk about the fact that other projects, there's a tendency for, I guess, commercial dig sites, especially in the US, to basically take a bulldozer, obliterate the landscape until you find something you can sell, like your T-Rex skull or whatever it may be. Because if you've seen the news lately, dinosaur fossils are selling for millions of dollars. It is very normalized. We've seen in some of the games that we've covered on this channel. Even in games like Animal Crossing that present paleontology really well, when you have excess fossils, you sell them, and they're really valuable. Anyway, in the real world, when you extract fossils for that purpose, you usually end up missing a lot of detail. However, when you're doing it for actual research, like what we were doing, you tend to take your time and do it properly. We worked really carefully, sort of layer by layer, to capture as much information as possible, collecting not just dinosaur bones, but fossil plants and microfossils, little teeth and vertebrae and stuff like that. Things that people would normally overlook. We were interested in the ecology, the relationships and the behaviours between the animals that once lived in this region. The idea is to get a complete picture, I guess. And by taking it slowly and carefully, we found that the animals, the dinosaurs, were so abundant in this spot because their bodies had flowed down a stream and then gotten stuck at what we call a log jam. The bodies literally piled behind this log, and we found this fossilised log stretching across the dig site. And you can just imagine all the bodies sort of piled up behind it in this gross heap, which would have been horrific, but it creates this amazing locality for us here in the present. And I think now we should be Shell Creek. Okay, so we're heading towards Grable. This is literally the area we were in. Probably drove on this road at some point. And this is the Bighorn Basin. This is where the rocks that all your favourite dinosaur species come from, pretty much. So we were working on the Morrison Formation, which is like the Jurassic dinosaur formation. You find your Allosaurus, Camarasaurus, Diplodocus, Stegosaurus, all can be found in this layer of rock. God, this looks super familiar now. They've really captured the way these little towns look. But we also worked on a formation called the Santana Formation, which is amazing because it's basically just these thin little layers of sand that you can just pick apart with a knife, and inside find these beautiful fish fossils, some of the species that I actually now work on in my PhD, which is quite cool. But yeah, no, I really miss just combing through that rock formation looking for fish. I would give anything to be back there right now. Anyway, this drive is actually going quite well so far. I think we should get to Thermopolis before it gets too dark. Normally I cut out the driving at dark because obviously you can't see anything, but it's just reminded me when we were here, literally driving down probably this exact road, we never really drove in the dark because there's a real danger of just deer and cows and turkeys just kind of wandering into the traffic. Bless them, it's really dangerous. And I'd never really experienced that before living in the UK, this idea that the animals were dangerous. I'd wake up every morning to the cries of coyotes in the not too far distance. I already mentioned rattlesnakes as well. The animal I was most scared of, weirdly, was the skunk. You'd be driving, I think, again, on this very road, and you'd see a skunk, or well, you'd smell the skunk, because you can smell them through the car, which is just insane to me. A skunk isn't a real animal, it's like a cartoon, it's not a real thing. But yeah, I was terrified of getting sprayed, so every single time I walked around our ranch at night, I was banging things and yelling really loudly because I didn't want to spook them. Oh, I think we're now in Thermopolis, so I'm just going to find somewhere to park, and yeah, this is really cool. So Thermopolis is most well known for its hot springs state park, where mineral-rich, geothermally heated water comes to the surface, and it's very impressive, but honestly it just kind of makes the whole town stink of rotten eggs. It's genuinely gross as hell. But anyway, the thing that Thermopolis is most famous for, in terms of paleontology, is the Wyoming Dinosaur Center. It's this huge, amazing museum, and I love this game so much. Because look what they've done. They've recreated this whole little spot. I remember sitting here looking at this extremely janky Allosaurus skeleton. I mean, it is this janky in real life, so I'm not going to complain about that. But what I really love is we've got this big mural over here. They've recreated it from scratch, and it's got some pictures of some of the casts and the fossils that are on display in this museum, including the Thermopolis Archaeopteryx. So this is one of, I think, about a dozen Archaeopteryx specimens in the world. The Thermopolis one's probably the best preserved one of the bunch. And this is, of course, this really interesting fossil because it has both bird-like features and dinosaur-like features. And yeah, I did not expect to find this. I just love it. I just think it's great. It's a freight train! Oh my god, I love freight trains. I say this every time. I love them so much. We're heading now into a place called the Wind River Canyon. I've never actually been here again in person, but I find it really interesting. The idea is that this whole region was uplifted, over the course of millions of years, but the river, this is the Bighorn River, has essentially stayed at the same height. So the valley's gotten deeper, but not really. It's actually the walls of the valley going up, and then the river is staying in the same spot. Does that make sense? It's really weird to think about, but I just find it quite cool. We've talked before on this channel about how you sort of learn subconsciously through media, especially video games, and I doubt a lot of players pay attention to the rocks when they play this game, but people must pick up on how the climate and the vegetation changes from west to east as you drive around in this game. I can't think of another game that demonstrates that this well. You know how they go from those big lush forests over in Oregon, and then these dry sagebrushes and in Wyoming. It's really cool. I think it's fantastic. Okay, it's day 2 of our little tour across Wyoming, and just stumbled across this. I hadn't planned to talk about this. This is the Red Canyon. As you can see, a lot of red rock. And we talked in the last video about how red rock occurs. It's where the iron oxides in the rock, in the sediment, are, well, they're rusting. They're going through oxidization, which is really interesting. But I can tell you more about what this rock formation is because it's kind of hilarious. This is a Triassic rock. It's called the Chugwater Formation, and it sits just below the Morrison Formation that I referenced earlier. And even though there are a couple fossils known from here, you know, some amphibians and some reptiles, the Morrison Formation just gobbles up all of the attention, so not a lot of people know or care about it. Now, like I said, it is the next day. I cut out all the driving at night. It wasn't particularly interesting, but you may notice we're slightly damaged. This trip was going so well, but last night we had a small incident. No! So we're a bit, you know, it's alright. We'll sort it out. It'll be alright.
A little touch of hope goes a long way, spreading color as we glide upon the grace. A little touch of hope, a little touch of hope goes a long way. Time to hack away your shadow.
So originally, I don't think Yellowstone was included in this, which, you know, makes sense. I think it would ruin a lot of people's immersion for why you would drive a truck into Yellowstone. But I think the game developers have kind of caught on that it is also just fun to explore. So they have added like this little bonus mission where you sort of deliver wildfire aid, which I think is a really interesting way of doing it. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll probably do that because it relies on NPCs, which is probably going to ruin the whole thing. Oh my god, what the hell is that? That's amazing. Is that a real thing? Oh my god, that's so cool. Oh, that's great. Oh god, the lights changed. Right, we'll just squeeze through here. Nope. Every single time I do one of these videos, I always reach this point where I get impatient. I ruin it for everyone. I was so genuinely proud of how, like, you know, few catastrophes we'd had. And now, like, I'm still going, like, double the speed limit. Dear god. Oh wow. For what is essentially just a picture in the distance, that actually looks really cool. Let's go and have a look at these. So this is Grand Teton National Park. This is the Teton Mountain Range, and yeah, that's super interesting. They contain some of the oldest rock in North America. It's about 4 billion years old. For context, the Earth is only 4.5 billion years old. But despite this, the mountains themselves formed very recently. In fact, they're some of the youngest mountains in the United States. They're only about 10 million years old, like the actual mountain itself. And you can tell that they're quite young because, well, they're so pointy. They've not undergone anywhere near as much erosion as, say, the Appalachians, which are relatively sort of smooth, I guess. Most of the time, when you find rock that is 4 billion years old, it's in areas that are completely flat, like in Canada or Australia. So this is really interesting because we know the only way that this could have formed is by faults. Faults are huge cracks that dip into the earth and they can push older rock to the surface. And we have further evidence of this because this area gets heaps of earthquakes. Each time the mountains grow a little bit, there's an earthquake. But the other great thing about this area though, is over here. And I am so glad they included this. Best thing that happened when I was visiting Wyoming is that we got to see some American bison or buffalo. In fact, either name is totally fine. I see a lot of very elitist biologists being like, oh, actually, they're called bison. But that's not true. You can call them whatever you like. They're extraordinary animals, and it was really awesome getting to see them in person. I'm going to do the horrible thing of showing you my holiday pictures, but look at that. Look how cool that is. That's so amazing. Now, in the real world, if you're on a road like this with bison all around you, the last thing you should do is get out of your car, which is why these two over here, absolute maniacs, way too close. So we think that they evolved around maybe 5, maybe even 10 million years ago, which is quite funny because that makes them older than those mountains. And for thousands of years, they were one of the most abundant animals in this country. You know, you'd find views like this all over. But in the 1800s, colonialists basically hunted them to extinction pretty much. The population went from tens of millions to just over 300, of which all living bison are actually the descendants of. And they of course did this to deliberately starve the Native American population. They would even shoot the bison from like passing trains and pile their bodies out to rot. There's some really gross photographs of that mountain of skulls. But fortunately, conservation efforts have allowed their population to recover, but they're still only found in Wyoming and Montana around Yellowstone for the most part. There are a few other populations scattered around, but this is where the biggest concentration of them can be found. Speaking of which, I think it's time we head to Yellowstone. Already, this just looks so unbelievably familiar and lifelike, even down to like the branches in the river. That's nuts. Yeah, let me just get my thoughts together for this next bit, because I want to word this properly. So right at the start of this video, I mentioned how frustrating it is to learn about, conspiracies, dinosaurs being faked and all that, etc. But honestly, I find it way more annoying when easily disproven myths about paleontology are shared by news outlets, especially here in the UK. Every 6 months or so, we get massive headlines about how Yellowstone is going to erupt and kill us all. Yellowstone is a supervolcano, so that means that the magma it produces is extremely viscous and therefore prone to explode. So if it did erupt, yeah, it would be pretty catastrophic for most life on Earth, which we can all agree would be a bad thing. However, despite how many articles say that it's due to erupt any day now, it just isn't. There's no evidence to suggest that it's about to erupt at all. By the time it does erupt, it will almost certainly have moved. So the volcanic centre that lies beneath Yellowstone stays put while the continent moves over it. And in my first of these little videos, I actually showed that you can find old former Yellowstones littered across the Pacific Northwest from where it used to be. By the time it's probably going to erupt, it'll be in like Nebraska or whatever we're calling Nebraska in that many billions of years' time. I've just realised as well that I didn't fix the truck in Jackson, possibly because I was distracted by those bears. And also we're running out of fuel, so we're basically just limping to the end now, which is how almost every one of these videos ends. I'm so sorry. Speaking of bears, I didn't get to see any while I was here. I think the other group did. I was playing Pokemon Go like an idiot and missed it. But did see like mountain goats and chipmunks. Oh, and I've got to mention the milk. Oh my god, it was either a moose or an elk, maybe a horse. Basically just a large, ambiguous quadruped in the shadows that we couldn't agree what it was. So milk is as far as we got with that. Oh, and on that note, come on. Now we're so close. I think we have reached the end of this journey. Anyway, I really recommend you pick this up. It's great. I love that I've got a virtual Wyoming to play in. It's been very nostalgic playing this. And thank you to everyone who stuck around till the end. Originally, this was actually meant to come out on the year anniversary of me making videos for this channel. And then I ended up kind of playing Minecraft for 3 months straight. But anyway, I hope you're all doing well. And I'm looking forward to doing another year of these because it's genuinely delightful. I think Montana is going to come out fairly soon as well. So we'll continue where we left off. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.